Jeff Yan, and Christy Choy, who will be leading this session.
Amazing. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here today. I'm Christy Choy, founder of SkyGG. We invest, research, build communities, and run one of the foundation delegated validators in the Hyperliquid ecosystem called HyperEVM. Great to be here today. And we are joined by our very own Jeff, the founder of Hyperliquid Labs. Hey, Jeff, what's up?
Hey, Christy. Thanks to everyone for coming, and thanks for doing this interview.
Amazing. Well, Jeff, I've had the privilege of knowing you since 2018, when you were building a decentralized prediction markets. As always, ahead of the trend. And now, I guess I got the liberty of being, one of your first investors. Fast forward, now you're building Hyperliquid, one of the most, by far the most exciting and the fastest growing ecosystem in the entire crypto. I think a lot of people say Hyperliquid just feels different. How even the product's different, the way how community engages, all different. If you would have to say what's the core philosophy that makes Hyperliquid so different, what would that be?
Yeah, it's not one thing, but I'd say going down the list, the most important thing in my mind is that Hyperliquid sort of represents what DeFi and crypto sought out to be. I think the space has so much potential, and I think Satoshi obviously was a genius and really laid the foundation for how everyone thinks about how finance ought to work. But along the way, I think the space has attracted a lot of more extractive people and parties, and it's easy to get lost. And I think Hyperliquid was, I think in recent times, one of the, I would say most genuine efforts at really cultivating this OG DeFi energy, and I think this integrity goes a long way. It's not something, it's not a metric that can be faked. It's something in our DNA, and I think I spoke to a bunch of builders yesterday at the I think first Korean hackathon.
Right.
And I was blown away.
First ever offline hackathon. First
ever offline hackathon. So I hear there are many more to come, and it's just so heartwarming to me as we're heads down building the core protocol, thinking from first principles how finance should be built to be programmable, and that's just our day in, day out. And then just knowing that it touches all these builders who show up, take valuable time out of their day, and congregate at this event, and just feeling the energy there, and it's something else. And so to me, that really is the number one answer.
Right. Yeah. I think even the way how governance works has been something that I guess a lot of people were looking forward to for the past years of building crypto, and then the way how you took, I guess, the USDH vote as well, which I guess for the context of the audience, a stablecoin provider who would get this ticker, USDH, and be able to operate under that had to go through a vote among the validators, and the stakers could move around their stake type to, I guess, show their vote via the validators. So, it basically lit up the entire crypto Twitter timeline for, I guess, more than a week or so, and a lot of, I guess, great protocols, including native markets, Paxos Labs, Athena, or Agora, and many others have, come up with a very compelling, proposal and all that. Did you, when you were, I guess, pushing through all this process and all that, what was your intention, and how did you envision this? Was it did you expect this to be, unfold like this, or?
People maybe think it was some 4D chess or whatever, but I really, it blew me away. And I think it's another example of just I think people people naturally gravitate towards systems that are fair and sort of encourage transparent and encourage real builders to come and show their worth. And I think people in crypto are kind of tired of these insidery, like crypto in name, but really just Web2 companies under the hood kind of setups. And so for me, it really felt like a technical decision. The protocol, ever since HIP1 launched, which was more than a year ago at this point, there have been a few tickers that were reserved by the protocol because it felt like this thing was too new, and it didn't feel right to say, well, first come, first serve on these very important or potentially very important tickers, because people assign a lot of value to names, and there may be no advantage at the protocol level, but there's a sentimental value to it. And so it was a bit of it just felt like the right way to do things. I think when there's something subjective that the protocol itself doesn't have a deterministic way to execute, then governance is the crypto way to handle things. And so to me it felt like kind of the natural way to handle something. And I suspected there might be a little bit of drama around it, but I was blown away by the quality of all the teams that stepped forward. It was really humbling to me because I still think I'm a bit stuck in the past. I still think of us as we're a small, tight-knit community, like sort of a group of misfits, like not working at these like big established protocols and companies. We're choosing to kind of leave that behind and start from scratch and build from first principles and do something we believe in. And I'm still in that mindset. So just I was blown away by all these like real big name, serious, buttoned up companies sort of coming and saying like, hey, like we love to integrate, and here's what we bring to the table. Like it was humbling to me. I think the community is lucky in some sense that I guess both sides are lucky, right? Like the community is lucky that we can have so many people take us seriously now, and then I guess these other companies see the value in such a inorganic kind of grassroots network really taking off. They see the power and potential there.
Right. I think we as a community were like very humbled again, by I guess the quality of the proposals, and hopefully we'll see. I guess we saw your new proposal around I guess the Hyperliquid aligned stablecoins and that framework. So I guess like are there other things that you're looking forward to from that proposal and moving forward regarding that?
I think there are a lot of proposals floating around actually. It's a bit scary these days because I think very quickly the sort of exponential growth has put a spotlight on the protocol, and there's a bit of tension. I think it's in our DNA to innovate as a community. We're always, Hyperliquid is in its albeit short history. I think we've taken pride in always being the first to do things, and we're not super interested in like safe bets which are following quick follows onto things that are successful. We think the best things have yet to be imagined and have yet to be built, and we're happy to take that step. And but on the other hand, it's when there are a lot of eyes on the protocol, there are a lot of people who want to see it fail for whatever reason, and it can be a bit scary. And so I think with all these proposals, it's nice to see. It's nice to get input from a wide variety of sources, people who think about different things day in, day out, and say, hey, like maybe Hyperliquid actually, on the way to housing all of finance, this should be a pit stop. And you see that with, like you said, like aligned stables. You see that with prediction market style infrastructure, and I think we'll continue to see more. So it's cool. It's cool, but it's also really tricky to navigate. I think it's tech and sort of these crazy dreams of people. Often you need to compromise, and but that's where the fun is in building. Yeah.
Right. Just amazed by I guess like all the steps that you guys are taking. And I just feel like you guys are always on top of things. move forward really quickly, but then try to incorporate as much community and ecosystem voice as much as possible. So it's like exactly what we've dreamed of. I guess a lot of questions that rise during I guess like USDH vote and all that was like, how do you like divide between like what Hyperliquid Labs, which is a small team as probably people know, build internally versus I guess like some of the Hyperliquid aligned teams like get to build? Like how do you envision that to divide?
Yeah, like you said, Hyperliquid Labs is very small. We're notoriously small, and I think that's part of it is that we work super hard and we genuinely believe in sort of individuals having outsized impact and cutting sort of bureaucracy and corporate. Like it's in our DNA. Like it's in what we're building. Like crypto is inherently a sort of it's something where individualism can shine, and so we're kind of anti-corporate bureaucracy and all that stuff. And but I think a big reason we can afford to be so small is that the core team actually is really just a technical team. Like we have, for example, we have no marketing department. We don't do sales. And the community kind of carries that and does it so much better than we ever could. And this is kind of in the spirit of crypto and what it stands for. So I think it's a really good synergy there. And so to answer your question, I guess I think anything that Labs doesn't need to do, I don't think it should. I think if something can be built by the community or by someone in the community, it should. And I think when market forces determine the outcome based on user preference and not something forced upon users, I think everyone wins. Like I think the product that comes out of competition is almost always better than a product coming from above somewhere. And maybe like one good example of that is like spot trading. I think people were very confused, like why, how can a decentralized, how can something claiming to be decentralized finance not enshrine any sort of spot bridging or like sort of custody, like that kind of what they're used to from centralized exchanges. That seemed crazy at the time, but and I do think like sort of hindsight is 2020, but putting myself back in those times, it was a risk that the protocol took. Like maybe no one would step up, and maybe it would kind of set back the progress on housing all the finance by a bit. But I think that kind of risk is something where we as a protocol feel kind of happy to take, because the upside is that the users really get to rally behind another protocol built on top of the infrastructure, and then that is such a more resilient setup where the core protocol can remain objective and focus on providing infrastructure to builders that want to build these really important pillars of finance. It's not like just scraps, right? It's not like, the protocol has everything important, and then builders can do whatever's left. No, it's like the core primitives of finance are open for people to build on Hyperliquid. That attracts the best builders. Right.
I think basically what you've commented on are magnified and manifested by having builder codes, HIP3, and a lot of builders, I guess, like natively organically coming to Hyperliquid ecosystem and continue to build out. And I guess like speaking of builder code, and I guess I heard you mentioning House of All Finance a couple of times here, but we're seeing a lot of these crypto native products, protocols, leveraging the builder code, entering like a 50-50 revenue share. Having no need to build their own, I guess, infra, backend, and but still can tap onto your, don't have to build their own perpsex, but having to have access to your liquidity and user base and all that, like Phantom, Axiom, and many other players out there. One of the community question that came up as we were preparing for the panel is like, how do you envision potentially non-crypto native like Web2 products potentially using like builder code to build on? Utilizing builder code to build on top of Hyperliquid, and what are some of the elements that you think would be potentially needed in order for that implementation?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's hard for me to know exactly how this plays out, but I think ultimately I think DeFi is the correct way to do finance. Like through the course of human history, there are like a few themes, and I think one very consistent one is that the systems that are less fragile tend to prevail, and systems that value individualism tend to prevail, and empowering people rather than I don't know, controlling them is just the right way to do things. I think both sort of morally and just sort of practically as a output optimization, and so I think finance is going to take that step as well. I think it has in the history of finance, but it's just historically been a slower industry to innovate because of because of its importance to everyone's day-to-day lives. And so, a long answer to the question, but I think Web2 companies and sort of TradFi I think they're already beginning to see and will continue to realize that crypto is not something to be afraid of. Like DeFi rails are not something to be afraid of, rather something to embrace and to you don't need to like lose. It's not something coming to sort of compete, but rather it's just like an upgrade to a system that can be upgraded, and it's better for everyone, better for the business, better for the users, et cetera. And so I think builder codes are our like sort of loosely. We don't have strong thoughts on how this stuff plays out, but builder codes I think provide the primitive that is needed, which is that an upgraded financial system probably doesn't sleep, right? It's global. It's 24/7. And it's more accessible than the current financial system. It has fewer barriers, and I think the Hyperliquid community is working day in, day out to make Hyperliquid this set of rails. Like liquidity really is infrastructure at the end of the day for people to plug into. And if you're a Web2 company with distribution, and this is just something to plug into. And I think people starts to click for people, one at a time. And I think when people see other people doing it, they're more happy to kind of take a look, like, hey, like really understand what's going on. And once once people understand the principle behind builder codes, they realize it's a no-brainer. Like, it's something that can only happen on a decentralized system, which is that you still ultimately talk to your users. You show them the interface. Right. Sort of that funnel is still yours as a business, but just tap into liquidity. That is, why reinvent the wheel? Like, why not tap into this global network of liquidity that is of high quality? And I think users ultimately appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the founders in the past have also mentioned about all these dreamy, idealistic, transparent, really revolutionizing the entire finance. But I think what's been impressive with, I guess, Hyperliquid ecosystem and I guess like with the Labs team was that you guys really mean it when you say things and have been living up to sort of the moral, ethical standards and the way how you guys operate. As you mentioned, like no sales team, no marketing, don't go out there, engage with these conversations, but then just really build out there, set the tone, set the stage for builders to come and build and really becoming like an open, I guess, ecosystem has been, I guess, like been amazing for the builders. I guess like switching the topic to like, I guess, HyperEVM, we've been seeing a lot of, I guess, like rises of like builders, like top builders actually, flowing into the ecosystem. What are you particularly, excited to see, and what do you think is like the core reason why all these builders are coming to build on HyperEVM?
Yeah, I think there are a few answers to that. One of which we kind of touched upon is just it's pretty hard to find organic flow as a builder in DeFi, and I think when you find that, it's sort of like something it kind of trumps all else as a builder. Like at the end of the day, you're building for users, and if you build something that no one uses, it doesn't matter how good your product is. And so I think finance is this interesting thing where there's like a cold start problem around liquidity, and liquidity begets liquidity, and so that's one part of the answer. But maybe the more interesting part is Hyperliquid also, I think we as a protocol team, because we're so narrowly focused on infrastructure, we really think about it from the ground up. And like, for example, one controversial thing at the time, maybe it's still controversial, is that we view infrastructure not as like a pure general purpose smart contract platform, but rather a set of primitives that ultimately need to be executed natively on the chain. And so smart contracts, of course, are one of these, because You need something to make the system Turing complete and programmable. But there are other such primitives, such as on-chain order books, for example. And as technically possible as it is to build some things on smart contract platforms, it just if you're really building something that houses all the finance, you don't like you need to be a bit more like practical about how infrastructure works. And so I think Hyperliquid is unique in that it thinks from first principles about what infrastructure ought to look like to house all of finance and how that interacts. So from HyperEVM, you can interact directly with the other core primitives on the L1. And so I think builders appreciate that, and they appreciate that this is like at the forefront of how finance may look in the future.
Amazing. We are running out of time, but I want to give you one last question. I guess like you've been mentioning about your vision of like becoming the house of all finance. I think Hyperliquid, I'm obviously biased, but is destined to win. And if we do, in the next 5 years, we'll probably revolutionize and reshape finance ultimately. What do you think is like one principle that or value that you wish the community or ecosystem will never lose along the way?
I think this goes back to the first question, probably. I think it really is this, well, it's kind of just like being good people. So I don't know. It's a combination of integrity and humility. Maybe that's not one thing, but it's.
No, it's very much important in this
industry.
Yeah.
I think it's. Yeah, crypto is just such a double-edged sword. Like with so much power, you know. With power and sort of just like any sort of new innovative technology that is a bit slow to catch on outside of the crypto native people, I think there's just there's kind of a fork in the road, and it's sad to see that sometimes people will exploit that rather than embrace it. I think if builders were, I think it's easy to get sort of maybe human nature to get a bit sidetracked when there's when there's success, and maybe that kind of greed kind of comes up. And I think I would hope that as Hyperliquid grows, that cultural, in the same way that the protocol is viral and spreads organically, I would hope that the culture and DNA around giving crypto a good name and sort of really being a shining example of what DeFi can be, and that this is an upgrade. It's not just like some convoluted scam or something.
Right,
I think it's like it sounds simple, but I actually think it's pretty hard to find in this space.
So be good people, be nice to each other, be transparent, open, and all that. Amazing. Well, thank you, Jeff. It's been a pleasure to be on stage with you. I hope we'll get, it was a short time, but hope to get more time to speak more. Amazing.
Thanks, Christy.
Thank you all.